Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. Today's guest, he's the founder of Little Unlikely Clothing. He's also a CEO of the Mindful Marketing, and he just loves helping people sell good products. So I'm really excited here to be talking with Jordan West. Jordan, hey, you ready to rock, buddy?
Oh, I'm ready, Tim. I am ready. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Two Canadians talking to each other too, so this should be really good.
Okay, let's try to keep the A's to a minimum, okay?
Yeah, totally.
Right on. So now we always start on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your life or your business that you can share with us.
Totally. Well, I gotta say, this year, we're recording right at the end of 2020 right now. It has actually been an amazing year for both of our businesses. Our clothing company, we're up 90% this year over year. E-commerce has just been absolutely unreal. I think anybody, who's listening to this, who's in e-commerce will know that, things are incredible. We've really kind of hit that next sort of level in e-commerce. So, that to me is just a massive success. And then at our marketing agency, we work with e-commerce stores. And, employee wise, we went from, I think, 6 at the beginning of this year to 13 now. So some big improvements. And to me, that just means, helping more people.
Totally. So then now with all the success that we get and hey, you're right. I mean, this whole year has been very bizarre. I think there's been a lot of reinventing for just about everybody.
Yeah.
However, I think part of the being an entrepreneur really is, handling all these problems that keep flying at us. And, oftentimes, even though a problem might be something that we should expect, we don't anyway. And so we're usually, beating down all these, these obstacles that are coming towards us. And so, we do hit bad notes from time to time. We do make mistakes. And I'm wondering, can you share, maybe a mistake or something that went wrong that you learned from, and maybe you can give us some tips on how to either avoid that or to get us out of that problem if it happens to us?
Yeah, totally. So when I was 23 years old, I decided to buy a chain restaurant. I thought that'd be an awesome investment. That at the time, so it was a Taco Del Mar was the brand, and at the time they were going through a bankruptcy. And I thought, oh, like what's the worst thing that could happen? The store was on sale for $35,000. I'm like, oh, $35,000. Like I can do that. So the worst case scenario was actually that I probably over 5 years lost about $150,000 and 5 years of my life throughout that time. There were so many learnings that came from that. I think that probably the biggest thing that I would tell people is when you're looking at a potential business to buy, look at the likelihood that it's actually going to make money. I look back at that business now, I would never purchase anything like that because it wasn't set up to make money, right? It wasn't set up to have any profit. I didn't know how to read a profit and loss statement. I really didn't know what all of that meant. And so being educated on some of those, finer things in business, I think can really help, and really know what you are getting into before you get into it. Now I actually pause before I say yes. Because before that I was just like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's hard to say no, eh?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So then, I mean, on that note, that's actually a really good topic to talk about because I imagine during this entire pandemic, there'd be people that would be looking to start something new and fresh. Maybe they were looking to buy something, to buy a business, and there's probably some people that are having some struggles and they need to sell their business. So, when at first glance, I think about it and I'm like, well, if they're selling the business, there must be a reason why they're selling the business, but that's not always true. Sometimes people build businesses in order to sell them, right? So can you give us maybe a tip on how to determine between the business that's failing, they need to get out, versus a business that they want to sell that's actually going to make you some money?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've actually, at our clothing company, been in acquisition mode this entire year, looking for companies to buy to kind of add to the fold. We actually already have 3 clothing brands within that company. And so this is something that I've looked at a lot. I'm actually looking for businesses that have hit a ceiling and don't know how to scale beyond, right? So if you already have an existing business, a huge tip here is think about the economies of scale, right? Think about the ways that you can add and tack on another business to the one that you're running and already use the resources that you're already paying for, right? For us, we're going to be in a 8,500 square foot warehouse. We can add another business into there, and it's not going to cost us any more on our lease, right? My marketing agency will then run all of the advertising for this company. That's not going to cost us anything because we've vertically integrated that in. So when you're looking at businesses, think about the amount of costs that they're paying that you may be able to actually just get rid of, right? Potentially, if you're like a really good marketer and they're paying like a CMO or like a chief marketing officer or a VP of marketing, you may actually be able to take that role. So that might be $150,000 that you can just take right off of there. And similar to like a lease, and similar to, if you have connections with manufacturers, that's what I would look at. I actually prefer looking at a struggling business that the owner is kind of like hit that ceiling and it's that has a good product, right? If people don't like the product, if I look at reviews and people don't like the product, that is not a business that I'd be interested in. So good product, number one. Number two, where can you add value without thinking that you're going to increase the sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then number three would be increasing the sales.
Okay, that's actually really good. So what you would do first is you'd make sure they have a good product, which is you'd think would be obvious, but not necessarily, right?
It's not obvious, right? It's not. People don't look at that first.
No, they don't know. But I mean, so you got a product that's got raving reviews. Now they've got some income. However, you would look at, why is this business having a hard time? So, if they're having a hard time because they're paying out too much money in certain areas and you think you have a solution for those things, well, then that might be something that you would want to look into, right? That might be a business that would be worth taking over for you because you have a unique ability to cut those costs, whereas the original owner may not have those connections and that ability to do that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. You summed it up perfectly.
So you figure out why they're failing and how you can succeed in that same position. That's really good.
Or even if they've just flatlined, right? That's another one, right? Of just like they can't grow beyond this certain point, and there's certain milestones that people hit where they can't grow beyond that without bringing in some outside help. I found like $1 million in revenue. That's a really big one to get to. 5 million in revenue, 10, and then beyond.
Okay, cool. So now, in order to, I talk about practice all the time. As a musician, it's all about the practice, really. You've got to get very, very good at what you do in order to go out in the world and be able to serve at an effective level. So can you tell us a little bit about how you practice and how you get good at what you do?
Yeah, totally. I think one of the big things that I do is just continually refine, especially on the marketing side, right? Continually test and refine what we're actually doing, because what works today is probably not going to work tactically in 2022, right? And so actually just, my scales would be like testing different things, right? So testing different placements, on different advertising channels, right? Testing different advertising channels. For instance, like Pinterest, right? Oh, hey, is that working right now? Is TikTok working? For me, testing all of those things and then iterating down from there. That is my practice, right? Hey, how many different types of creative can we form for this certain ad to try and really get it traction?
That's cool. Okay. So now what kind of amount of time would you dedicate to that? As opposed to, because there's one part of it that, figure out something that works and just keep on repeating that. But you're right. Oftentimes I've noticed even the opposite, where you go and hire a coach or you hire somebody with a program that, got them rich, and then you try it and it's just, the world changes so fast nowadays that something that might have worked for somebody else may not work for you. So you're right. Your tried, test and true method might start to fail after a while. So you have to be kind of looking for the next thing to try. So what kind of, how do you define how much time to spend in the thing that works versus the thing that you think is going to work in the future?
Totally. So I think that the answer to that is to figure out the difference between strategies and tactics, right? Because generally strategies are a lot longer term, whereas tactics will change, right? Facebook could go away in 2021, right? They're getting absolutely cut up, right, into different business entities, and that is going to hurt advertisers. We all know that that's really going to hurt advertisers, but that's okay because Facebook is not the strategy, right? That's just a tactic that we use to get people into our funnel, into seeing our product, and there are other tactics out there that we can use. So if you can figure out the difference between strategy and tactic, and strategy is way longer term, right? And it's looking at all of the, it's really looking at the long-term kind of effect of all of these tactics. So if you can separate out those two, strategy remains constant as long as it's working, right? And we rarely are ever going to shift the strategy, more than a degree or two, because that'll make, massive consequences in the end. But we'll use different tactics along the way to get there. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. Because the strategy uses probably a set of different tactics. And then you can have some tactics that are working right now, and that's great. And then you can also be testing some new ones as you go as well. And I think you mentioned it, that the social networks just keep on changing, and this one's hot now, then that one's hot. So if you've got all your eggs in one basket, well, then you're going to get into some trouble at some point when that tactic becomes not as hot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now, work from home has its own set of challenges as opposed to, having the brick and mortar business or even going into an office of sorts. So, I like to talk about the jam room and the home office, the place where you actually get things done, and find out how people have made it a effective place to work rather than a place filled with distractions and that kind of thing. So what do you have in your home office that's working for you?
Yeah, so this was a huge shift for me during the beginning of COVID. I came back from a trip right at the beginning of COVID. It was just crazy. We didn't know what to do. So we had an office for my marketing agency. We had a full warehouse for our clothing companies. But we were told not to go in, right? So our clothing company continued, to go on. Our marketing agency, no one went into the office because we were told, don't go into the office. And so we were working from home with kids, right? School was done. I have 3 kids. It was just like crazy. And I had nowhere in my house to go, like our bedroom kind of, but there was nowhere specifically at home for me to work. And so I was working from my back porch at points, and that was so distracting. My kids would come up all the time, and I looked at my backyard and I looked at one of the corners and I'm like, I think I could build something back there. So I got to drawing and I was like, okay, what would be the ideal place? I'm like, it's got to look really good, right? But it's got to be like minimalistic. What are the things it needs to have? It needs to have lots of outlets. It needs to be able to have a place. I have a podcast. I'm on podcasts. I'm on 3 today. It's just got to be a really nice environment. And so we just built it. So we ended up building an office back here. I think it's 12 by 12. And then right above me is a little loft, so we can have guests up there if we need to. And it's just absolutely beautiful. We ended up spending a little bit extra on, some of the nice wood accents all around me here. And it's just an absolutely serene place where I cannot hear my family at all when I'm working, because I'm the type that if I hear a problem, I'll go solve it, right? Or I'll go try and help. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll come and help. Now I don't hear anything when they're home, and luckily they're in school right now, so that's not an issue. But it's probably one of the best work decisions that I've made.
Yeah. And, I think there's probably a lot of people that are going to be having to create something brand new. Cause I know when my first apartment, now I've got a nice, office / jam room, actual jam room. I'll put my music equipment in here and everything. But when I first started, I was working at the kitchen table because there just wasn't any space for it. And it is extremely distracting to have people come and, because especially your kids, right? They don't really, unless you've been working from home for a very long time, they don't understand that it's like I'm at the office. Just pretend I'm at the office. I'm not here. And
totally.
That concept is just very difficult to get across to especially children. But I like the idea. You've kind of just found a place and you just built an office. Great. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people doing that same thing as well.
I think so.
So now, what about the band? In order to, get to a certain extent, I suppose you can start off your business, definitely solopreneur, prove your concepts and all that. But at some point, you mentioned about hitting a ceiling, right? At some point, you're going to need some help from somebody. And
Totally.
so I'm wondering, for you, like, what is your band? Like, who are the people in your business that help you get your work done?
Yeah, so I'll explain actually how I find the band, right? So number one is knowing your own strengths. So I really believe in Clifton strengths. I think that it's an incredibly powerful tool to be able to figure out what your actual strengths are, what you're good at. So Strengths Finders, some people might have heard that out there. Taking that test was so eye-opening to me, realizing that so there's 4 different quadrants, right? One is execution, one is influence, one is relationship, and one is strategic. For me, I'm all influence and all relationship. And so that leaves no room for me to execute anything, which is true. Like, I don't really get anything done ever, except for the fact that I have, between the 2 companies, I have about 20 something employees. So I'm always looking for people to fill in those gaps. So when I started the marketing agency, I already knew that I was very deficient in execution and in strategy. And so my business partner, Sean, came on board. And Sean, by the way, is a killer metal drummer, just so you know.
Nice.
Yes.
Jam.
Sean Lang, look him up. He's
Okay.
He's like an amazing metal drummer. So I looked at Sean's strengths and I was like, oh my gosh, Sean is all execution and all strategy. This is incredible. And then we realized that, oh man, we don't have somebody to, I'm busy doing this kind of stuff. We don't have anybody to actually help move customers along the journey. We need to find a salesperson who has this, Sean and I are both pretty soft-spoken. Like, I don't, get too upset about things.
Mm-hmm.
We need to find somebody who's got some real command and is able to tell our clients, this is the direction that we're going. This is how it's going to work. And so we found Kevin, who came in, and now he's actually a part owner in the agency because he was able to do that. And then we just continue to look at what does that, it's like searching for somebody, who plays a certain instrument, and you just know, you're like, okay, well, they need to have those certain skills, right? You wouldn't hire a drummer to play bass. It just wouldn't. Yeah. No, people have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even, you probably wouldn't want like a guitar player playing bass, right? Yes, they could. They understand the concept, but you probably wouldn't want them there. So when we're doing our hiring, so we're actually right now hiring 2 new account managers. We know exactly the strengths that make a perfect account manager. And so we get people to take Strengths Finders before we actually hire them. And we look and see what their strengths are. And we're like, oh my gosh, you are a bass player.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, let's get you in there.
That's an extremely, extremely good idea, to take some sort of test, before you start hiring, and also to figure out what your strengths are. Yeah, I really like that. That's a new answer for that question, which is really cool.
Awesome.
I know that that's true, because I mean the analogy for music is perfect. You figure out what you do best, and I think that's kind of the next part of it, is that you mentioned it right. I mean, if you're a guitar player, you probably could play bass, but is it going to be the best performance of your life? Probably. Why not find out what your strength is and then just play to that, and then find someone else who's in that strength or in that gift zone and let them play to that, rather than just kind of filling in whoever, wherever, just because you like them, right?
For sure. We work with a Strength Finder consultant, or a Clifton Strengths consultant. And what she calls these types of organizations and these people are pointy people, right? Not well-rounded people, pointy people. And pointy people are the ones who really make a big difference in this world, because they just work within their strengths. So I don't even try to execute anything throughout the day. Like, my entire day today is, either supporting our staff at both companies, or me being on podcasts, or people being on my podcast, because that is what I'm good at. And that is that's my pointiness.
Oh, I love it. Love it. And you know what? If you're listening to this podcast and you're an entrepreneur, you're probably closer to a round person, which means you're good at a lot of things, but not really awesome at any one of them.
Totally. And you have to be at first, right?
Yeah.
to get until you can bring people into your team. It's so difficult at first.
Well, and what I normally do is, you sort of find, you sort of try your hand at everything. You figure out what it is that runs your business. And then since because you went ahead and tried it, what it is that is involved, then like you say, you can kind of go, okay, these are the areas that I need. Now I'm going to go find a pointy person for each one of these areas. Right.
Yes,
and then you can continue to be the round person in the middle, sort of directing the show. Right.
Totally.
What you do?
Totally. If you are more of a round person, for me, I am really pointy when it comes to influence and when it comes to relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I can at least direct people and know the things. You need to be self-aware enough, right? Enough to know the places where you're really bad at. And it's interesting because I didn't always know that with strengths finders. Like I didn't have a language for it at first, but now I look at everybody in my life, and every single person that I've hired is an achiever. That's one of the 35 Clifton strengths. They're an achiever. That's what they love to do. And it's one of the like big executing roles. I do not have achiever in me. I just don't. I don't care if we like, and a classic achiever thing is, when they hate going on vacation, right? Because they're not achieving something on vacation. So for an achiever, you need to like, have them, say you're going to Disneyland whenever that reopens, and you're like, okay, we're going to try and hit 10 different rides today. So they can check it off a list, right? So my wife is a big achiever, she's always like, why are we booking another vacation? Like, because it's so good for our family and so good for us, right? And so you have to like play into that. And so having achievers in my life makes so much sense because I don't. And that's just,
Yeah, you know what? And I really like this topic because the round people are the ones that are going to have a hard time probably even delegating, just because they want to have their hands in everything and they think that they know how to do everything. But like you say, I mean, what's the point of doing everything halfway when you can find somebody who's an achiever that can do it full way, in that area that you need it, right?
Totally, yes.
Love it. I hope people are listening to that, especially when you're looking to delegate, because that is a great way to delegate properly. So now on to the next topic here. It's time for your guest solo. So tell me a little bit about what you got going on in your business and what you've got to offer.
Totally. So one of the big things, I'll just kind of preamble this a little bit. So one of the biggest things at our clothing company that we've figured out, we call them gated launches. So what we do now when we're doing a big launch, so we did one recently. In 24 hours, we did $250,000 of sales, which is just unreal, right? The way that we did this is we actually password protected the site, and people needed to get the password to enter the site. Now, obviously, this didn't just come about. This is a strategy that we've been using. And I really do believe this is a strategy, right? A long-term sort of strategy that we've been using. Every time we do it, we have phenomenal sales. So we've actually created a checklist based on exactly what we do for this gated launch at our marketing agency, because we really feel like any good product company can do this. So we're giving away the checklist to people for free. But it's not free, because you do have to enter your email address, which is, there's something there when you're entering your email address.
Yep, there is.
But it's at mindfulmarketing.co/sales-launch-checklist. So sales launch checklist. I literally use this checklist every single time we launch a sale. And I really believe that it's something that has skyrocketed our clothing company, and then all of the clients that we work with. It's one of those things that I'm trying to get people on board with, because I believe that sales launches and just regular product launches are so important to continuing the velocity of people's businesses.
Yeah, checklists are great for achievers too. We get to check something off.
Totally, exactly.
Right on. Well, that's awesome. So now you mentioned where we can get that checklist, right? Can you mention that again?
Yes. So mindfulmarketing.co is our company. For Canadians out there, it's CO, not .ca.
Okay.
And then /sales-launch-checklist.
Awesome. Great. Cool.
Yeah,
so
not the greatest URL in the world, but.
Well, simplicity is key, right? So thanks so much for rocking out with me today, Jordan. This has been a good time.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I really like it. I love your podcast. I like the way, I mean, I was going to say former musician, but no one's ever a former musician. So
You're still a musician.
yeah, exactly.
Right on. Yeah, no, it's good fun, and I like talking to people who've got some things going on in their business, and just to give us a little bit of inspiration, right? Because especially working from home, during this that's going on, it can get even more lonely. So having a friendly voice to listen to and go, okay, all right, this is giving me a little bit of a few tips here that I can implement into my business. So thank you for all the great tips today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Really, really appreciate it.
No problem. And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe on workathomerockstar.com, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.